welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Friday night. I know what everyone was craving on their Friday night, more U.S. politics, global affairs, the good stuff. And I am so happy to have you here. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about what's going to happen this year, putting our prognostication hats on a little bit. And I am so happy to be joined by the one and only Dr. Jesse Turiel. Jesse is a long-time friend of the show. He's been on a few times. We're so happy to have him on again to talk about his top 10 predictions of 2026. Well, actually, it's our top 10. We have 5 and 5 each, and it's a great conversation. I'm super excited for you to listen. But before we get into it, I want to know what you guys think. What do you think? Do you, not just about our list, but what do you think's going to happen this year? I mean, my God, what a consequential year for not just the country, but honestly, the world. So I'm really curious. It's hard to say in the madness that is modern U.S. politics, but I'm happy to have you here to join me for the wild ride. I'm so happy to talk right now, and without further ado, let's get to it. Alrighty, and we are back with Jesse. Jesse, what's up, dude? Welcome. This is your inaugural 2026 episode. How's it going?
Yeah, I think it's my third appearance on the show, which we were just talking about it earlier, would make me have the most appearances of anyone other than Rick, correct?
Yes, and we will have a running tally.
All right. I want a 3-timers club like like SNL has.
Exactly. Friends of, like I said, we're becoming less lonely every single day over here on these Lonely Liberals. But no, it's I love that you continue to want to come onto the show. It's so great having you. And what we're doing, again, couldn't be more up your alley. We're ranking stuff.
Always up my alley. Excited.
Making lists. Oh, yeah, baby. And one thing we should note before we actually get into it. So you and I had this idea at the end of the year, because we're recording this now, mid to late January. And so we were drafting some ideas, thinking about it in our head, and both of us lost some predictions as this year has went on, because as we found out under this Trump administration, things moved just so crazy fast that we became out of date pretty quick.
Yeah, you sent me the message, I think it was New Year's Eve, about doing the podcast. I said, great. I started drawing up a list. You drew up a list. We both had on our original list, it's still up on the Google Doc, Trump will invade Venezuela in 2026. And then a few days later, I message you, well, that prediction's gone. So then, I don't think I told you this, I came up with another one, which was that Trump was going to start backing down over Greenland and kind of pull back on the tariff threat. And then, of course, this week he did that. So, we figured we needed to get this episode in soon because they'll all be gone in a couple of weeks.
Exactly. By the time of it, we'll be trying to, and they'll have to get crazier and crazier, right?
Yes.
Because if you had said, like, my number one hot take is that he invades another country without notice, it would have been a huge deal. We got that January 1st, basically. We kicked off the new year hot. It's funny. It'll be fun to do it because not only do me and you both love predicting the future, I tend to always be a little bit more dramatic and you tend to be a little bit more accurate. Maybe is the better way to put it.
I will say this, though. So, I think I'm pretty good at analyzing the past, and I think I'm fairly good at analyzing current events, but I actually don't have a great record about predicting the future. So to any listeners out there, don't take my predictions and put some money on Polymarket or whatever. So I still get a lot of flack back in 2015 when Trump first announced he was running and he started leading the polls. I told anybody who would listen, I said, there is 0% chance that Trump wins the nomination, much less get elected president. Zero. And here we are. So This is for fun, right?
Yeah.
This is not an endorsement of my predictive capabilities at all, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Also, like, some of these I hope we don't get right. So,
Yeah,
like,
that is true also.
but yes, so when we made yes, so these aren't necessarily in order of spiciness, but we will go down 5 through 1 because that just makes things more fun to listen to. But you could argue any of these are fairly spicy or not. So let's kick it off because we got a lot to talk about. Why don't we start with your 5? What do you got?
Okay. So I'm going to start off with a fairly mild take, and that is in the 2026 midterm elections, the Democrats will win back the House, but not the Senate. And I think a lot of people may not realize that. The House actually didn't have much of a partisan lean overall in 2024. In fact, the Democrats only lost by 5 seats, right?
Mhm.
And Republicans had a 2.5% popular vote margin. So even just a swing of a point or two towards the Democrats would have gotten them the majority. So they don't need to win by 4, 5, 6% to get the majority in the House. You could even make an argument that if the Democrats didn't overperform at all, if it was like a 50-50 vote, they could still win the House. So I would say it's fairly likely they get the House. I'm thinking like 80, 90%. The Senate, though, is going to be a kind of a tougher hill to climb. The Republicans have 53 seats. The Democrats have 47. And obviously, with the tiebreaker, the Democrats would need to flip 4. So I think they're going to get a couple. I don't think they're going to get all the way there. Now, the one kind of part of my uh, I guess, take that could be considered a little against the grain is Maine. So um, every single year, the prognosticators always say that Susan Collins, this is the year she's going to lose, right? They've been saying this every year for since I was in high school.
Yeah, my whole life.
And yeah, and
Yeah, my entire adult life.
yeah, Susan Collins, she's like, she's kinda like the monster in
Like Voldemort, she keeps
like a
coming
B
back from the
movie,
dead.
like, horror film. Like, yeah, just
Yeah.
when you think she's dead, she comes back. So, right now, she's trailing in the polls. Everybody says this time is different. You look at the betting odds, she's a heavy underdog. I'm not buying it. I think somehow she is gonna pull it out. Um, I do think, though, there are a couple of places that Democrats could get a pickup. I think, obviously, North Carolina with former Governor Roy Cooper. I think he's actually favored. I think he has a good chance of winning. And then in Ohio, there's Sherrod Brown, who he lost in 2024, but he only lost by like 6%. And that was in a year Trump was on the ballot in a Republican year. So I think he has a good chance. A couple other places, Alaska, Texas, places to keep an eye on. So I think Democrats will pick up a couple seats, but I don't think it'll be enough to win.
So I want to unpack this a little bit
Yeah.
because it's something we've been thinking about a lot, and something we're going to be talking about all year, right? This is the
Mhm.
topic, right? The midterms. What do you think? Does your confidence come more from just like historical tendencies of midterms tending to favor against the president and stuff like that, and like just Trump being a maniac, or do you like why will they show up, I guess? Like,
Yeah.
very few of these candidates are remarkable, really, in any way. I mean,
Uh-huh.
many of them, like you said, Cooper and Sherrod Brown, these are one of them out of retirement,
Yeah.
one
They're
guy who's,
retreads. Yeah.
yeah, these are guys who have been lingering around for a while. What, like, is it just like the general sway that makes you feel good? Or, like, yeah, like, what do you think?
I think so. So if you look at midterms historically, almost always there's a reaction against the party in power. Pretty much the only exceptions in the last 30, 40 years have been in 98 with Clinton and in 2002, right after the September 11th attacks. Um, every single other year, there's been a swing to the opposition. And right now, there's no reason to suspect that isn't going to be the case. So if you look at current polls, Democrats have about a 5 or 6% advantage in the polls compared to them losing by 2% in 2024. So they're about 7% ahead of where they were a year and a half ago. Now, does that mean it's going to hold up? Not necessarily, but just that along with historical precedent, I think it's a fairly good bet. But you're right. Some of the candidates aren't the best. I think Roy Cooper and Sherrod Brown are pretty strong, but then in Maine you have Janet
Susan
Mills,
Collins.
who's
Janet
what,
Mills, yeah.
80?
For a 6-year term. I hope
Yeah,
Plattner beats her. I know he
yeah.
probably won't, but I
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there is all this
86
stuff coming out about, like, his past Reddit posts and these weird
his
tattoos. But
tattoo. Yeah, I
honestly,
know.
I take that any day over just being 80 and
Collins.
having no new ideas. Or Collins, of course. Yeah,
Either or, right? No, I
right.
agree. He's not a perfect candidate, but I know, I thought a lot about him. Like, am I giving him the benefit of the doubt when I wouldn't, you know what I mean,
Mm,
in other cases? But there really is nothing else so far that has pointed to that being real. So maybe
right.
I'll end up eating my words on him, but like, we'll see. No, it's interesting. So one thing to your point, because I think you're right? If I had a bet, I'd bet that you're right. I have two worries. One, I worry that I don't want people to assume this and then not be highly motivated to, rally
Right.
and vote because they think it's just this surefire thing. And then two, kind of in that same vein, obviously, I agree any one of these guys is better than what's happening. You got to vote for anyone. I don't care, really. You know what I mean? I'm voting the janitor in at this point compared to these guys. That being said, I do worry, like, will Schumer take a victory lap and think that they, like, have learned what they needed to learn from their defeat in 24? Like,
Yeah.
I worry that both things can be true. It's fine in the short run because of the current state of affairs, and we're kind of at an all hands on deck kind of moment. But I don't know. Like, I haven't seen anything from the strategy, at least, that has given me certainty that they've come up with a sticky solution rather than something that's like a temporary Band-Aid. What do you
No, I
think about
agree.
that?
I agree. I think if the Democrats win, it will be in spite of their leadership. I'm like you. I don't like Schumer at all.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so he's for the listeners don't know, he's the minority leader of the Senate, and he's pushing 80. And then you think, well, okay,
A
maybe,
young 80.
yeah, maybe his second in command can step in and take over. Well, no, Dick Durbin is 85. So
And retiring.
yeah. So, the leadership has not been the Democrats' strong suit. So, they do have Hakeem Jeffries in the House, who is a sprightly 55 years
A
old.
youthful
But
fellow.
yes, but yeah, I think the Democrats certainly, if they do win, there is a risk of taking the wrong message out of it, right? And that
Exactly.
if they win, it's probably going to be a reaction to Trump and just kind of historical counterbalance to the majority. And I don't think Democrats are necessarily selling themselves well right now, at least
No,
at
I
the
mean,
leadership level.
I don't love both Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer not going to Zoran's inauguration when they both
Yeah,
represent that state and are the party
absolutely.
leadership, especially Jeffries, who literally represents the Bronx. I mean, that's a joke. I mean, that's a sick joke. I mean, come on. Like, you got this oh, whatever. Listeners are probably rolling their eyes. They're so sick of me whining about this. But let me go to my number 5. I think that's a great
Okay.
one. So my 5, it's a little bit more niche, but it's also probably the least steamy of my takes because of
Hmm.
its nicheness. And that's that I think that AI data centers become the new cultural wedge issue for like progressive Democrats and just your boilerplate Democrat, like the Schumers, the Jeffries, and stuff like that. You're already starting to see a little bit from Bernie, right? Like talking a little bit about AI and jobs and robots and jobs and stuff like that. Even Trump talking about energy prices and stuff like that. And the truth is, electricity bills have gone up 40% since 2020. They definitely are partly driven due to the fact that AI centers are incredibly energy demanding. They need grid upgrades. They need utilities to like work around them. It's really interesting stuff. It's part of what I do for my paying job. So I find this stuff super interesting. And I just think it's one of those things that's new. It's something that kind of has to happen. There hasn't really been a strong stance on it one way or another from the left. And I can just see the argument really well. You know, you've got environmental justice issues with the water use. You have the workers, obviously, stuff, job loss, stuff like that. And then you also have giant, campuses pretty close to residential areas, the sound, stuff like that. So I could just see a world where AI data center stuff becomes a real kind of cultural issue that maybe isn't as extreme as Gaza was in the 24 election, but like in that vein where like everyone on the left will have to have a stance because it comes up a lot. What do you think about
Yeah,
that?
I think that's a good point, and you kinda see a little bit of, horseshoe theory going on here, where the very progressive Democrats actually share a little bit with MAGA, but for different reasons. So, obviously, Trump is concerned about these data centers because of energy prices. He doesn't
Yep.
want electricity prices to go up in an election year. And then Democrats are concerned about these data centers for like environmental issues, labor issues. And so you kind of have this weird alliance between the ultra left and the ultra right for completely different reasons. And then you have kind of the standard centrist, corporate minded Republicans and Democrats in the middle pushing for these things because they think it'll bring in jobs and money. So I do think it will create some interesting kind of cross cutting in both parties. So yeah, I think that's a interesting prediction.
Yeah, and I feel like it isn't touched yet, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it's like clearly gonna be on the horizon. There's no universe that this doesn't continue to be a need for the country, like these data centers are coming whether we like it or not. And
yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting story. So what do you got for number 4?
So for number 4, this is actually the one I feel most confident about. So
Hmm.
I think the Supreme Court is going to make a show of standing up to Trump while actually giving him 90% of what he really wants.
Ooh.
So the way I think about this is imagine you are on a subway and you accidentally bump into some guy and he falls down, he gets up and he says, I'm going to sue you for everything you got. He takes you to court and he says, Nick, you have to pay me all your money. And also, I want the court to give you the death penalty. And then the court says, well, we're not going to grant the death penalty, but you do have to give him all of your income for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
And
great.
in that case, like, would you be happy with that?
I mean, I'm glad to not die, but yes.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's what I think is going to happen with this year's Supreme Court docket. Basically, the Supreme Court is going to push back against Trump on the most obvious cases. And then, they'll get to have their headlines in the New York Times and the Washington Post, like Supreme Court pushes back against Trump. But if you look under the fig leaf, you're going to see that they're really continuing to erode virtually everything. So just digging into some specific cases.
Hmm.
So the one, I think, obvious case that the Supreme Court is going to push back on Trump against is the birthright citizenship case. So this is Barbara versus Trump. And basically, Trump issued Executive Order 14160, his first day of office, basically saying, no more automatic birthright citizenship just for being born in the US. And frankly, there is no way to interpret the
There's
Constitution
just no way. It's
any
right
way
there.
else, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
let me
ridiculous.
just read this. So this is from the 14th Amendment, Section 1. Okay, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside.
Well,
Can't be much clearer than that, right?
yeah.
And we have precedent dating back to the 1800s that no matter how you got here, if you were born here, you're a citizen. Now, there is an exception for children of diplomats, but that's because the diplomats are under the jurisdiction of their home country, right?
Yep,
Not of the
yep, yep,
United
yep.
States. But if you're a legal immigrant, doesn't matter whether you're here legally or not, right? You pay taxes, you're subject to the laws of the United States, so you are, your children are citizens. So I think the Supreme Court is going to rule unanimously. Maybe Clarence Thomas will dissent,
Yeah, because he's such a
but
piece of
I
crap.
think they're
Yeah.
going to turn it back. And basically, this is like the death penalty thing in my analogy I was saying, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is the nuclear option. And this is basically the Supreme Court saying, like, okay, we're not going to just completely ignore the Constitution. Okay. And so I think the New York Times is going to say this is a big win against Trump and for the rule of law, but really it's just the absolute bare minimum. And then I think a couple other places where the Supreme Court's going to push back a bit. I think they're going to say Trump is going to be limited in his ability to impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And, Trump is going to be very upset about this, but I think he's going to find other ways to implement the tariffs anyway. And I don't think it's going to change that. And then the third thing is Trump versus Cook. So, as you probably know, Trump tried to fire Lisa Cook, who's a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors.
Mhm.
And uh, basically, he claimed that Cook was engaging in mortgage fraud, saying that she claimed two different homes as her primary residence in order to get better terms. So basically, just kind of coming up with an excuse to fire her. And the Supreme Court already kind of deferred an emergency request to remove Trump immediately, so she's still serving. And they actually heard oral arguments on the case just a couple days ago. So I think the court is going to say no, he can't fire Cook. And again, I think the media is going to say, oh, the Supreme Court is pushing back on Trump. But I think that the only reason that the court isn't going to allow him to do this is because if Trump is able to fire members of the Federal Reserve for pretty much no reason, then that's going to cause markets to be unstable, right? And so we don't want that.
No.
And ordinary Republicans don't want that. So I think the areas where you'll see the Supreme Court break from Trump is areas that benefit, big business and just the continued stability of markets. Now, where I think the Supreme Court is going to kind of do the damage under the hood is there's a case called Trump versus Slaughter, where
Okay.
Trump tried to fire the commissioner of the Federal Trade Commission. Basically, same thing without cause, made up some reason of fraud. Um, and I think this time the Supreme Court is going to side with Trump. And so basically what the Supreme Court's going to say is, yeah, Trump can fire the head of any independent agency except the Federal Reserve. So, okay, you make headlines, you rebuke Trump with Lisa Cook, but you allow him to basically have free reign with everyone else. And then, kind of going with your redistricting thing, I think that the Supreme Court is going to either strike down or limit Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Oh, you do? That's
Yes,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So this is Louisiana versus Calais.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And basically, so the Voting Rights Act says that basically states can't discriminate with their congressional districts based on race. So if a state is 40% black, it needs to have 40% of its districts, have representation of black members of Congress. And actually, interestingly enough, they're trying to uh, Trump is trying to challenge the 14th Amendment in the citizenship case, but he's actually using the 14th Amendment to try to challenge the Voting Rights Amendment, saying, well, equal protection clause. So if we give unfair kind of affirmative action to minority districts, that's violating equal protection. So I think the court is actually going to agree with him here. And that is going to open up a whole can of worms where a lot of districts in the South that are minority majority could be flipped in a race. Now, I don't think it's going to happen in 2026 because there's not going to be enough time, but there could potentially be 10 to 15 safe Democrat seats that flip to Republican because of this. And so again, my whole kind of theme on this is that you're going to see headlines that the court is pushing back on Trump or at least giving him a split decision, but in reality they're actually giving him 90% of what he wants.
That's a really interesting one, and it especially that kind of comparison against, okay, Federal Reserve firing versus, other independent agency X, because you're right. Well, and also one of the things that has been so unique to this term of Trump is just how much he's meddling with these organizations, things that are very, very in the background,
Right.
and things that the average person, we talked about, Jerome Powell and his basically his hostage video he released last week. And I was telling people, you could have gone your whole life not knowing who that was and been totally fine. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like the average Joe, they don't need to know. I mean, just you should for your own interest, but you don't really. He's just, the bank.
Right.
And,
And even
you
now,
know,
most people probably don't. Like, I'd say probably less than 20% of Americans could identify Jerome Powell.
and the
Is that
fact
fair?
that this very, very boring guy who shouldn't even be remotely in your interest is pleading for help, it's not a good sign.
No.
And yeah, it's yeah, and we saw the same thing when they canned the CDC head, Monteris, a
Mhm.
month after she got hired, right? And all of the other infectious disease people resigned, saying they're manipulating data, yada yada yada. So, no, I mean it's interesting, and it does tie really well into my number 4,
Okay.
which is very well tied to yours. Is that I think the story of 2026 will be about these redistricting, or what I can call map wars,
Mhm.
right? I think that obviously Texas and California really got the headlines, especially Texas because the Democrats fled,
Yep.
and the FBI couldn't find them even though they were recording videos, which is I just find so funny. We don't know where they are. Like, really? They're on the internet. But and obviously, California passed its legislation, but that's kind of overshadowed a few other states doing the same. You saw Missouri add a seat, North Carolina now thinking of it, Virginia thinking about it, Maryland thinking about it. And yes, it does remain to be seen if they'll be able to stick in time for the 26 election. Now, they're trying to do that. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
clear indicator. And I think that no matter what happens, this is going to spew so many conspiracy theories. This is going to be insanity one way or another. If the Republicans lose, you're going to hear about California, wherever else it happens. It's going to be all over the news. It's going to be crazy. Fox News is going to be running wild with it. Trump's going to use it as, motivation for whatever the hell, I don't know. And vice versa. If the Democrats do bad, the left is going to say, oh my God, it's the maps. And these maps are going to be an annoying story that we're going to be talking about, I think, for a while. And partly it's fair, right? I mean, my God, mid-decade redistricting is crazy. It hasn't happened since the 1800s, really. And
Yeah.
especially it hasn't happened at the request of the president in the case of Texas, right? So it is an incredible, crazy moment that could very well swing a majority of the House, which is, like you said, unbelievably thin. It couldn't be more narrow. So I just think this is just going to heat up. I don't know if it's a good thing that it will heat up, because I do think it's a little wonky and maybe will not stick in the brain trust of the American people as much as maybe, people who tried to use it as a story want. But nevertheless, I think this is a conspiracy theory gold mine and something that we are going to be hearing about for a very long time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think, gerrymandering is one of the worst things about the US political system, and I think
Period.
if you ask
Yeah,
the average
period.
voter, conservative or liberal, it sucks, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
problem is neither side wants to unilaterally disarm. It's kind of like nuclear weapons. Like, would the world be better without nukes? Yeah, obviously. But would I suggest that the US destroy all of their nukes tomorrow? No, because, you can't live in a world where you don't have nukes and your enemies do. So, neither side wants to give it up. And I think it's going to take some kind of amendment or some kind of bipartisan agreement to get rid of it. Which good luck with that.
Yeah, good night.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of fighting over it. The interesting thing I think about it is that a lot of incumbents, even in the parties where the gerrymandering would benefit, don't really like it. So, like, imagine like you're in a state that's pretty evenly split, and you're a Republican, and you have the control of, the governor and the houses of Congress, and you want to make a change to increase your representation for Republicans in Congress. Well, let's say that you have a seat that's like a swing seat, so like roughly evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, and then you have another safe Republican seat that's like, let's say, plus 20 Republican on average. So what you would do if you were trying to gerrymander is you would split the difference, and you would take some votes from the safe Republican seat and give it to the swing seat, and so that both seats would be Republican plus 10, and so that in 95% of elections, Republicans just win both. But if you are the Republican incumbent in the seat that was R20, you don't necessarily want that, because you took a seat where you don't have to even worry about campaigning at all. And now if you're in Republican plus 10, like, yeah, you're probably going to win, but you still actually have to be concerned and actually campaign. So you're probably not going to support that change. So interestingly, Trump wanted Indiana to redistrict and Republicans control everything there, but the Republicans in the state Senate actually rejected it because, again, they were concerned about gerrymandering themselves out of a job.
100%.
So
It's
yeah,
against their selfish interests, like
absolutely.
individually. So, and yeah, the nuclear comparison is a good one because one listener, when this was breaking out, like wrote in saying they compared it to mutually assured destruction,
Mhm.
and that's basically what kept what's happening now from happening because they could go tit for tat basically and like ruin everyone's life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's been more of a slow burn. But yeah, I also think it just plays so well into the voter fraud drama. In 24 in pre-election polling, 6 out of 10 Americans said they were very concerned about voter fraud in that election. And they've been doing everything in their power to stoke voter fraud, period, right? Whether it's with mail-in ballots, licenses at the mail, they're trying to convince everyone that it's just, it's the Wild West at the voting booth. But I just can't. Can you imagine vote like it leans into it too well, like just the suspicion of the votes aren't being counted fairly.
Right. And if you think the votes aren't being counted fairly, then it's an easy step to just say, well, why bother voting at all if they're just going to rig it anyway?
Exactly, and especially if it's publicly known that they're redrawing it and basically re-rigging it. Like it's catnip. It's conspiracy catnip, honestly.
Mm.
But let's go to your number 3.
Okay, well, so I think our number threes are actually the same. So maybe we can kind of merge it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So both you and I think that basically there's never going to be a single Epstein file release moment that causes any meaningful impact against Trump. Like, there's going to be dribs and drabs throughout the year. We're going to find out new things. It's going to look really bad. People on the internet are going to freak out. Maybe you're even going to see some traditional right-leaning people like Joe Rogan come out against Trump. But ultimately, nothing is going to change.
Yeah. I agree.
So,
I mean,
so you had the same one. So what do you think?
I think you're right. I mean, dude, they were supposed to release all these documents, early December, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a real law. I think people don't realize that was a real law and they didn't comply.
Hmm.
They just released a bunch of pictures of Bill Clinton, who, by the way, they're trying to say is contempt of court right now, which is interesting, but that's not here and there. It's so interesting. 180 from especially right-leaning podcasters, conspiracy theorists on Epstein. They're not released. The Department of Justice has acknowledged that there's probably 2 million plus records that are still in the quote-unquote review stage. It's so obviously being manipulated in such an disgustingly no effort at all. Like, you don't even need a conspiracy theory, right? Like, they're just doing it right in front of our face. And
Right.
it has so little impact on people who were screaming at the top of their lungs that this was so important for so many years. And frankly, I think sometimes because of how often it's talked about, we've become numb to how horrible Epstein was. and how horrific the crimes he did were, and like the scale of how horrible he was. I feel horrible for the victims. I feel horrible that this has been such a joke of a handling. Yeah, I mean, you would think this would be. I think people are sick of it, and I think that really plays into Trump's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think they've handled it in a way that helps them by just dragging it out and instead invading countries in the interim.
Yeah,
And
like
so I don't know.
I've pretty much given up hope of any scandal bringing down this administration. Um, you know, we can go back to the first term with James Comey and Russiagate, the first impeachment, the second impeachment. We all thought, oh well, this must be the time he's gone too far, and literally it has no effect.
No effect.
If Congress, if the Senate didn't vote to convict Trump's impeachment after January 6th, when he literally threatened their lives and he was leaving office, he was a lame duck, and they still didn't do it, there's nothing that he could do that would affect support in his base. Literally nothing.
And
So,
you knew that was going to happen. I mean, got to remember, a week before, before this even law got filed, remember they leaked some of those Epstein emails between him and his brother, and they were like, quotes from Epstein saying like, "I can't believe no one figured out that Trump knows about the girls." Just like couldn't have been more blatant. And people were like, "Oh, Epstein always joking around." I'm like, "What?" Like, or the birthday card. "Oh, they forged that 30 years ago."
yeah.
I
No,
mean,
there's literally you could come out with like a literal video of
AI
him like
edited.
on episode. Yeah, it's AI, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, if you want Trump and his supporters out of power, vote, right? Ballot
Nothing
box.
to do about the
It's the only way.
character.
It's the only way it's gonna happen,
In
right? There's
fact, I
no.
think we should stop even mentioning how crappy of a person is. I know
Yeah.
it's tempting because he's such a monster, and he's abhorrent in every
Mhm.
way. But if anything, it almost fuels them, puts logs on the fire. You know what I mean?
Right, because you could just say like, "Oh, it's Trump derangement syndrome," right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
attacking his character when, we care about the real issues and, look at the economy, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I do think it's kinda like, it's tempting, right? Because as we know, Trump's character is, not
Horrible,
great, to say the least.
literally
But
terrible. Yeah.
But it doesn't do progressives any good
No,
to at
no,
this point, right?
no.
Stick to the real issues that affect people. Stick to the issues, especially economic ones, because ultimately that's what people care about, right? They don't care if he's, a terrible person. They just care about, what he's doing to affect their
Do I
pocket.
feel richer? Do I feel safer?
Absolutely.
And nothing else matters. That's the hierarchy of needs. That's
Yep.
one. And if you're not addressing that, they couldn't care less. But at the same time, if you are addressing that, they're actually pretty open.
Mhm.
People will actually start doing stuff if they don't
Oh, yeah.
feel
Yeah, so, like,
squeezed,
when did we see Trump's popularity actually decline the most? When he started this whole tariff thing in April, and then during the government shutdown, when people started getting affected by that. So,
Big
yeah,
time, yeah.
when people's wallets start getting affected, that's when they're gonna listen.
That's why Republicans, to your point, when he tried the Powell stuff, they all said, "Whoa, whoa," because the markets went crazy. You can't,
Yep,
arrest the Federal Reserve. Anyway, yeah, no, so yeah, you're right. That was my 3 as well. So why don't we just go straight to your number 2?
okay. So this one I think is pretty interesting because 'cause I've never heard anybody talk about this yet.
Interesting.
And that is, I think you're gonna see the first signs of a rift start to form between Trump and JD Vance. So,
Interesting.
yeah, right now, pretty much all is well, right, between Trump and Vance. They're getting along great. Now, my prediction is that as soon as the midterms are over in November, Trump is a lame duck. So, yeah, I think he's gonna like kind of troll people with like running again for a third term. I don't think it's actually gonna happen. Okay. So, what that means is that JD Vance starting
Sorry to
November
cut you off.
2026.
Sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off, but can you
Yeah.
believe you even had to say what you just
I
said?
know, right?
Yeah, I just heard you say that. I was like, that was a serious sentence from a serious individual saying something seriously. Like, Can you even believe that? That's
No.
like, it's even the fact that that's non-0% chance. Like it's not
Yeah.
zero. Like
And honestly, I think the chance that it is so low is mainly because Trump is so old and obviously not in great health. I
I've been
think if he
saying
was
that on the pod for like the last few months. It's so true. Like, dude, if Trump was 45, we'd be maybe cooked.
yeah, I think so.
He would be going nowhere.
Yeah.
He would be
So
Putin too. Anyway,
I
sorry.
think, Trump, maybe he's going to want to try to pass the torch off to one of his sons, but I think he realizes that it has to be JD Vance, right?
Yeah.
And so the problem that JD Vance faces is that right now he just basically has to be completely loyal to Trump. He's basically his lapdog. But if he wants to get the nomination, and certainly if he wants to win, he can't continue to do that forever, right? Because if you just kind of just stand behind Trump and say, yeah, whatever he said, that's going to make you look weak and it's going to make you look lame, even to the MAGA supporters, right? Because
And Trump actually sucks at being a president. So, like,
right,
if you actually look at the impacts, he'll eat all the sin of
right.
Trump. Yeah, exactly.
But like, even if, even with his supporters, right, it makes you look weak if you just kind of agree with everything he says, right? He needs to assert some kind of independent image, right? So he has to be loyal to Trump, but he has to be his own man too, because nobody can be Trump except Trump.
Yep.
Right. Nobody wants, Trump light, even MAGA supporters. Right. Nobody
Totally.
wants Trump, but less good or less, funny or whatever whatever
He
people
doesn't
value.
have the New Yorker charm, and he hasn't
Yeah.
been in the public eye for freaking
Right.
40 years. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he has to carve out something for himself, right? Now, Trump, he basically wants fans to be Trump 2.0, and he wants to be the power behind the throne. So, like, basically he's going to gift JD Vance the presidency, but any positive attributes of Vance to him are just going to be a reflection of Trump himself,
Yeah, just
right?
Trump 2.0 in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So anything apart from that, he's going to start to get jealous. And so I think what will happen is after the midterms, Vance isn't going to say anything. He's not going to break dramatically with Trump, but he's going to start to assert himself more because he needs to know, he needs to get people to know that, he's his own man, he's running for president, and, he's going to take the mantle of leadership. And so I think even he's kind of has a no-win situation because he can't just parrot everything Trump says because then he'll look weak. But if he says anything, kind of contradicting anything that Trump is saying, then Trump will get jealous and he'll start to, kind of react against that. And even if Vance is completely loyal to Trump, but he starts getting praise from the media as like, oh, kind of the new leader of MAGA, like, Trump 2.0, it's JD Vance, look at him. As soon as he starts getting any positive attention, Trump's not going to like that either
No,
because he
he'll
likes to
throw a
be the center
baby
of
fit.
attention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He
So
is a child.
I think Vance is kind of screwed either way. And I think what will happen is they're going to play nice for a bit. But just like with Trump and Elon, you get two egos that big, you're going to get some friction. So I think if not by the end of 2026, certainly sometime in 2027, you're going to see Trump get jealous or get upset about something Vance is doing or attention he's getting. And then Trump is going to take to Truth Social or Twitter, and he's going to start to put down Vance. And this is going to put Republican officials in a really tricky place because they're going to have to
Oh, they'll
choose
be in a
sides.
blender. Yeah,
Yeah,
that will
because
really hurt them.
they're terrified of Trump. But then again, you don't want to go against the possible leader of the party for the next 8 years. So I think you're going to see people really start to squirm over this. And that's my prediction.
I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
One is, do you think this will still happen if Republicans win the midterm?
I think yes. So I
So you
think
think this
either
is
way.
inevitable, like either way?
I think
Okay.
either way, right? Because if Republicans lose, and the mood is very anti-Republican, I think Vance is going to have pressure to break from Trump a bit, right?
Mm.
And so Trump is not going to like that. But if Republicans do well, and then Vance steps in and starts getting all this praise, then Trump will get jealous of the praise. So I think either way, you're going to see an eventual rift.
Do you think, and I was talking to a friend about this, or I think I was talking to my dad about this actually, but I think this is, and this isn't probably that interesting to say, but if Republicans win in 2026, the next 2 years will be absolutely insane. Like I think will be way crazier than these previous 2 years. I think because
Yeah,
Trump has
I
nothing
agree.
to lose, right?
Mhm.
So I kind of feel like this is hard to believe. This has kind of been a little bit of a muzzled Trump. Like I think they know that if he went full batshit the first 2 years, which I can't believe this isn't full batshit, but I think it actually isn't, that the midterms would be ugly. I think
Yeah.
if they win, we are doomed, kind of.
Oh yeah,
I
I
think,
agree
yeah.
because yeah, the flip side of this is after 2026, Trump doesn't have to worry about elections anymore because if they lose in 2028, in a weird way, Trump can even just say, well,
No one's me.
no one's me. So
Yep.
Vance clearly didn't have what it takes. And so it's not a reflection on him if they lose in 2028. So I think after 2026, he doesn't care anymore about public opinion because he's done. He has 2 years left. He's 80 years old, right? It's just time to do
It's
whatever
over.
the
He
hell
can
he
just
wants to
go
do.
wild. He can
Yep.
build his ballroom, paint
Yep.
everything gold. And yeah, I mean, that would be a nightmare. Please go vote if you're listening. Please vote. And my last question before we go to my two is, do you think Vance would have certified the election like Pence did?
That's a good question. I think,
Now, so say the election
yeah,
happened now.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think so like let's say Trump was running in 2024 if like the same thing happened.
Exactly. It was all just pushed
Yeah.
4 years out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think he would because usually um when I am looking for how somebody is going to react, basically it comes down to naked self-interest. I think ultimately politicians are going to do what's best for themselves. End of story. And so with JD Vance in this situation, I think he's going to want to run again, and he's going to want to um, get himself the presidency. And if he goes down with the sinking ship, then he's tarnished forever. But then again, right? If he pisses off MAGA, he's kind of done either way. So,
Like
I don't
Mike
know.
Pence. I mean, that's what
Right?
happened to literal Mike Pence. He
Yeah.
ran for president. People forget that.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I don't know. I think he would kind of be in a no-win situation. I don't really know what his moral convictions are deep down because if you look at some of the stuff he said before 2016, he
He
certainly
called
wasn't.
Trump Hitler. I mean,
Yeah, he wasn't pro-Trump before then. So I don't know. That is a great question, and I honestly don't know.
how sad that you don't
Yeah,
know that, right? Like, I don't know either. Honestly, my gut says no, but I think it's
yeah,
not like a strong opinion. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, 50, 55, 45, like
yeah.
it's,
Flip a coin.
yeah, because I totally agree with you. Like, at one hand, like, you're really gonna do that? Like, you're really gonna, like, end the US as we know it and, like, live like that? That being said, there's still a very meaningful percentage of people in Congress that still say the election was stolen.
hmm
And what we've
Now the
seen out
question
of
is,
Republicans.
are they saying that or do they actually believe it?
Oh, I'm sure they don't, but it doesn't really matter if they vote that
True.
way to some extent.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they believe in anything that
Mhm.
they're doing right now, yet they continue to go,
Right.
I have a hard time, and without going on a huge tangent, like understanding really what any of these guys actually think. Like I know that sounds crazy, but literally how they've self-massacred every single view we've been hearing our entire lives in the last year. I mean, where's the principles?
Yeah.
What principle that was true 10 years ago that you could say, oh, every Republican in the Senate believes in X? Like, what still sticks from that? Like,
Tax cuts for the rich.
yeah, I guess, but yeah, maybe that's it. Just make rich people richer is the only thing that stuck,
That's about
because
it.
the small government's gone. Because
No.
this is the biggest government we've ever seen, like in terms of manipulating markets, manipulating people's lives. Like Trump basically uses the federal government to do whatever he wants. Like, it's wild. Anyway, but yeah, it's an interesting question. And so my two is it's not as interesting probably as yours, but I think it is. But it's similar. I think we're going to see MAGA v. establishment this year in general, in the sense that because there are so many governors up for election, there are 36 governors up for election this year.
Wow.
And, attorney generals, secretaries of states, lieutenant governors, all senators all around. And because Trump's actual policies aren't that popular, it's Trump that's popular, not his policies.
Mhm.
And a lot of the impacts of his unpopular policies are going to be reeling their head this year, like ACA subsidies getting cut or, benefits or things like that. Like things you and I have always talked about, right? Like no one really likes running on higher taxes, lower benefits. Well, he's kind of doing that for everyone other than the richest, And I think that will reel its head. And I think we've already started to see a little bit of it. So thinking of in Louisiana, right, Trump backed Rep. Julia Letlow to primary Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy certified RFK. So it would be so sweet to me if he not only, he was such a scumbag. I hope he doesn't get to keep his job. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that he'd be losing his job to an even crazier person.
I
But
love that you are using this platform to call him out, by the way, because what a hypocrite.
what a hypocrite,
As a
right?
doctor. Yeah.
It's just, how does he sleep at night? Every single thing he made RFK pretend to promise to, RFK has gone against it, and none of it has mattered. He hasn't said basically anything. He might be the biggest slimeball of them all. I hate him. Bill, I'm not a Bill Cassidy guy on this show.
Not a friend of the podcast.
No. I mean, because that Senate confirmation hearing was so upsetting. I don't know what he believed, really. Just fearful of Trump. And look what it got you. It got you primaried,
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't think this is the end of it. I mean, my God, Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning. You know what I mean?
What a world.
I know, right? These Republicans do not bear well when Trump turns the gun towards them. They fold very fast. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that will continue. I think that there are always, you can always be even more loyal in his eyes, mafia boss Trump. And frankly, there's just no way all of these state officials can defend these actions because they're literally unpopular. So I think that puts them in an odd space. I think you're going to hear Trump talking a lot about random elections that people don't normally think about, especially because of how much Trump likes invading states with the National Guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has a very interesting relationship with state laws in general. So I just think we're going to start seeing a lot more, drama about ICE, data centers. I actually think the trans issue stuff will go away because he basically got rid of all of that and nothing has changed for most people's lives other than trans people,
Yeah.
So obviously super important issues, but I think Trump had tried, and the far right had been trying to convince the average Joe, part of the reason why your, economic situation isn't better is because Biden's funding, trans people, which was obviously ridiculous, but that narrative can't be true anymore because clearly they're not doing it, So I think that will kind of hit the back burner because it's just reset, I think, until a future more I think it's going to have to build back up, sadly.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
and
it's kind of
obviously
like
ICE is just a bigger issue.
Yeah. I think it's a great point, and it's kind of similar to mine where the next couple years is going to be crucial. Where do we see the Republican Party after Trump has left the scene? Do we see them go back to kind of the Mitt Romney Republicans, or does MAGA take on a life of its own? And we have never seen MAGA without Trump, right? Because he is, call him what you want, but he's charismatic and he is MAGA, right? Him
Yeah.
embodied in the flesh. There's no one else. So can MAGA exist without Trump? I don't know. And I think you're right. I think we're going to see a war in the Republican Party over the next few years. And I don't know who's going to win.
Because Heritage Foundation definitely wants, that's where the ideas are coming from, right? I mean,
Yeah.
That's Mike Johnson, that's Vance, that's these guys. Trump doesn't know. I think Trump knows, Invasion Act of blah, 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 the Open Waters Act. No. You know what I mean? Like, it's these random policy idiots, Stephen Miller, Russ Vaught, all these heritage
Yeah.
guys manipulating an egomaniac, in my opinion, to, get it helps both of them. He can consolidate power. They can try to make the U.S. a Christian ethno-state or whatever they're trying to do. They're wild. Yeah. I don't know. They've never had their, vehicle, charismatic vehicle. Newt Gingrich wasn't that, Vance, frankly, wasn't that,
No.
So they just found an egomaniac willing enough to do it to an extent. And yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. That will be, like you said, a big deciding factor of the near-term future of the country is how the Trump v. idea split in the MAGA world. And, will he just become some sort of patron saint of what could have been in 20 years? Oh man, Trump, if only he could have been there long. Like, is that what we're going to hear? I don't know. I really don't know. I hope so. I hope that, these guys actually do have values, but
Yeah.
I don't know right now, frankly. I don't know.
Like 50 years from now, when the history books are written, are we going to look back at this 10-year period as like just some crazy acid trip that we eventually woke up from? Or is it going to signal the start of something like a paradigm shift? So, yeah, I mean, your guess is good as mine. I don't know,
I
but
don't know.
I think that's going to be the story of the next few years for
But
sure.
there definitely will be bickering, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's too, our state governments work too well. You know what I mean? Like, we're lucky that we have real state governments that operate at a less mafia level than our current federal government does. We really are fortunate that
No, seriously. Yeah.
it's saving our butt big time. Yes. So what's your number one? What do you got?
All right, my number one is another one that I haven't heard anybody else predict yet, and that is I think that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is going to announce his retirement after the end of the Supreme Court term this July. And if
Oh, I
not this
haven't heard
summer,
that. Yeah.
and if not this summer, definitely by 2028. So the reason I think this is going to happen is I don't think he wants to be the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And right now, I know what I'm going to say is going to offend a lot of our liberal listeners, but I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg's decision not to retire in 2014 completely ruined her legacy. Now,
You're preaching to the choir. I completely agree.
I think she was an amazing person. I think she did a lot of good in her role. But I think that you could draw a direct line from her refusal not to step down, from her refusal to step down to Republicans gaining a majority on the Supreme Court and overturning Roe v. Wade. So, I know she's still a liberal hero in a lot of books, but I just cannot look at her and not see a failed opportunity. I just can't do it.
Well, it had
And
to
I
have been
think,
her ego, right? Like,
yeah,
why not
has
resign?
to be. Has to
Like,
be. She was 84 with pancreatic cancer and a bunch of other cancer diagnoses. Um, Democrats controlled the Senate and the presidency. If not then, when? Right? And
oh,
I think she,
no, I agree, and
yeah,
it's sad because, like, you're right. Like, she is so iconic for a reason, and why did she do that?
yeah.
Such a
So
mistake.
I think Clarence Thomas is going to see the writing on the wall. He's 78.
Younger
Uh,
than both of our previous president candidates.
fair enough.
Younger than Janet
Um,
Mills.
yep. And even though I predicted that Democrats are going to take back the Senate this year, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And if the Democrats do take back the Senate and, let's say that a Democrat wins in 2028, all of a sudden you have the most conservative Supreme Court justice in his 80s, just waiting for, another incident like what happened in 2014, right? When um it wasn't oh man, I'm drawing a blank here. It wasn't Scalia. Who died in 2014 on the Republican side?
I'm not good with names.
Oh no, it was Scalia. It was Scalia.
It was
Yeah.
Anthony Scalia, remember? What a treat.
Yeah. How could I forget?
What
Um
a lovely man. Anthony Scalia.
yeah. But I think what's going to happen is if not this year, then probably next is Thomas, whether he wants to or not, the conservatives in power will politely, but not so politely, suggest that he step down. And I think eventually he'll see the writing on the wall, he'll step down, and then you will see a 45-year-old clone of Clarence Thomas get approved in his stead. Because right now, I think the single most important thing for whether or not Trump and MAGA survives for the next couple decades is the Supreme Court, right? Because, Congresses come and go, presidents come and go, but Supreme Court justices, they serve for life. So if Trump could get in his fourth nominee, basically he could almost by himself get a majority of appointees, then his legacy could last for decades. So I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on Thomas. And I think Thomas hasn't shown any semblance of, standing up to Trump before. So I think he's going to step down sooner rather than later.
That's a good one. And you're right. It's one that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, and one that would have massive implications for us. I mean, we're basically already cooked for the Supreme Court for our rest of our lives, just
Yeah.
based off the ages of the current panel, right? But yeah, that would be a final kind of nail in the coffin in a way, that there's really no world where it's in our lifetime we'll go back to any semblance of a kind of a nonpartisan court.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I don't see a world where term limits for the court justices ever becomes a thing. I remember Biden actually tried to pitch that his last
Yeah.
year, and it kind of got buried a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that everyone says they want, but it never actually ends up happening. But if you ask someone, like if you just went to someone on the street and said, hey, do you think the Supreme Court justices should have a life sentence, or do you think they should have term limits? Like almost everyone would say term limits if they knew what you were talking about. But it just doesn't seem to actually trickle up, to
Yeah.
something that could become a real policy issue.
Yeah, and because the Constitution is so clear, I think you
Yeah,
would need
it's
an
just
actual amendment. And to get, super majorities of Congress and state legislatures to all agree on something that is highly partisan, good luck with that.
night. Yeah, good night. Yeah, no way. And yeah, Clarence Thomas, one of the worst, right?
Yeah.
taking bribes, doesn't care, on cruises, private jets. He couldn't care less. How long has he been there? Like 40 years, 30 years?
35 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's still hip. still. I mean, I don't get it. The Supreme Court, what a sad state of affairs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
God, arguably one of the most prestigious entities in the world for like decades, hundreds of years. Now, just a sad state. It's
Well,
just
yeah, I mean,
sad.
it used to be the case, like, everybody hated Congress, like, pretty much since the beginning of the country. And then the president, you like him if he's in your party, you don't like him if he's not. But then the Supreme Court, everybody just kind of assumed that they had the best interests of the country in mind, and they've always kind of been insulated, um, at least in terms of public opinion for the most part. And, we don't see it. I think, and you're going to continue to see that get worse, where basically anybody who manages to get appointed is going to do the bidding of whoever appointed them, and I think that's a very slippery slope down the road, Democratic.
Yeah, like that's a branch,
Yeah,
and that's one of the three, right? If we don't have that, what are we doing here? And yeah, it's interesting too because it's one of those things that just blink twice and then it's gone. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like everything felt fine until it didn't, And then yeah, here we are. So my
yeah,
number one is not as hot, probably my most hot take, but not my hottest because of my God, they are causing a lot of news this week in their financial meetings this week. I feel like every night we're hearing a new, oh, actually, like Trump said this, Besant said this. And so there's been rumors out of Davos this week about this. So it's not as hot, but I still think it's a pretty good take. I think that Cuba will be Venezuela 2.0 for the United States. And what do I mean by that? I think it will start with economic pressure, like a blockade or something like that. Then it will start with naval strikes. Oh, they're bringing drugs. And then I think they're going to go for a full-blown regime change in Cuba, which is a pretty bold take. But
yeah,
this is why. One, the legacy's there. They don't like Cuba. The U.S. and Cuba have not got along. Particularly Marco Rubio is obsessed with Cuba. It's been
Yep.
one of his issues since he became a politician, frankly. And now as Secretary of State, he must be just drooling. He can finally act on his ambitions with that. And more importantly, Cuba is not doing well right now. They have basically no electricity. Reuters in 2025 suggested that there's been 9 hours a day on average in Havana is complete blackouts in Havana. So like they don't even have reliable electricity right now. That's a disaster. They have depend massively on Venezuelan oil. About 1/3 of Cuba's oil needs come from Venezuela. The other bit is from Mexico. I think that this is another area where the U.S. has always wanted more of a presence. They haven't ever really gotten the ability to do what they want there. They don't like how close Cuba is. They don't like how close Cuba has always been with countries they don't like. I think Venezuela gives them a green light in a lot of ways to continue this on. I mean, my God, the fact that Congress now has basically effectively cuck themselves with the War Powers Act with Venezuela multiple times. They keep voting to not let themselves be the ones who make the say with this. I have no reason to suggest that they won't continue with this. Probably will be conveniently around when a Epstein file gets released or something. But yeah, I mean, you could argue could this happen to Colombia? I think definitely, because Colombia has been so outwardly against Trump. And rightfully so in the case of, sovereignty and stuff like that. But I think Cuba would be easier for people to digest in the U.S. And I think similarly to how I feel about Venezuela, I think there'll be a few weeks of people being happy that a horrible leader, I don't know enough about the Cuban leader, but I know in the case of Maduro, bad leader, getting outed, and there being really no plan in place. And 5 years from now, we're hearing guerrilla warfare, populist movements. People don't understand why there's all these bombs going off. There's a civil war. Some group goes crazy that hates the U.S. I can already see it. This is going to happen in like 5-6 years. People are going to go, I can't believe how much money we spent here. You can just see it. And I think Cuba will be the next country on the docket. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great take. Honestly, it wasn't on my radar at all. And I will vouch for you. I saw you had this take a few days ago when nobody was talking about it. And then literally 2 days ago, Wall Street Journal posted an article saying, Cuba's next. So
Yeah, I know, which is
I
a
will say
bummer.
you called this before. Now, I think Cuba is a logical target for Trump for a couple reasons. Number one, they do have a legitimately awful government. The president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, who kind of took over for Raul Castro 5 years ago, he is a communist dictator. Let's not sugarcoat it. He's been awful for the country. So they're in a crisis right now. And number two, unlike a country like Iran, which is also an awful government that is massacring its citizens, unlike Iran, which it has 80-something million people and an actually strong military, Cuba doesn't. And
No.
so, there's less risk for that. And then finally, Cuba has kind of been the thorn in the side of the U.S. forever, since JFK, as you mentioned. And a lot of expats from Cuba in the US, like in Florida, really don't like the Cuban government. And so it would be really popular in Trump's kind of adopted home state of Florida to take down the Cuban government. And so I think a lot of Latinos who fled um, socialist or communist regimes in Venezuela, Cuba, et cetera, would actually welcome intervention. And so I think you reach the trifecta of legitimately bad government, can't really fight back that much, and potential for popularity among a crucial voting bloc. So yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they could be next.
And still a bad idea. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no,
yeah,
not saying it's a good
no,
idea.
I know. No, but like you're exactly right. Like it's just so interesting. Like even when all the stars align, it never works. Like it's always a bad idea. Can we even? And you're much more knowledgeable about the history of intervention, stuff like this. Like, is there any example really with the U.S. meddling with the leadership and it working out in our favor long term?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you see kind of the international community brought in, like with Slobodan Milosevic back in like Serbia and the um, kind of the conflict in the Balkans in the 90s,
Mm.
I think you could argue that, US and UN intervention was good there. I'd say I'd say in Korea when we went in, but again, that was in response to an actual invasion of a sovereign country.
Yeah, that was
Cuba
a
for
little bit muddled. Yeah,
yeah, Cuba
exactly.
for all of whatever awful things the government is doing, they're not invading other countries. So, yeah, it's tough to think of an example where a government is not actively invading another country and going in and toppling the regime is a good idea.
Because it didn't work in Libya with Gaddafi,
No,
right?
no.
It didn't work. I mean, I highly doubt it will work in Venezuela. Obviously, Iraq,
Yeah,
Afghanistan,
the odds aren't
Iran,
good.
Iran, right? I mean, we're still dealing with this.
Afghanistan, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of Reagan's meddling in Panama,
Mhm.
all around South America. It's interesting, and it's one of those things that I can just smell the playbook, right? First, it's sanctions, then it's should we really ship things? Then it's a blockade. Then it's a military blockade. Then it's they bomb a boat they say has drugs on it. And then all of a sudden, bam, some random squadron is in Havana grabbing the guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I can just see it. It's weird, it's unfortunate, and I don't think people realize how expensive it is to run other countries, even when you have a plan, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Especially if they
Li
don't have oil, which Cuba doesn't have oil.
No, and lastly, I think one thing too, and I mentioned it, but, like, worth repeating, if you don't have electricity, like, reliably, it is really tough to govern a people
Yeah.
because they will not stay calm if you don't have power. I mean, Iran is a good example of that with all the blackouts they've been having. Some
Mhm.
forced, right, with
Right.
trying to keep the information inside, but still, electricity is a big problem. And yeah, the connection between Venezuela and Cuba in terms of oil is something to watch. Before we get out of here, I know I've been really enjoying this. Did you have any honorable mentions that you were thinking about and you didn't want to throw on the list, or anything that kind of was a runner up?
Um, I don't have any honorable mentions per se, but, I think a lot of the theme of my 5 that I said have been pretty negative, at least
Yeah.
if you are left or center left.
Well, then taking the house, that's
Yeah,
positive.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but I do wanna say that although I am pessimistic in the short run, I am somewhat optimistic in the long run. I do think, right? And, again, I could be wrong. This could be another 2016 prediction, but I do think the craziness that we're seeing with Trump, I think it will pass eventually. Now, do I think it will pass this year? No. Do I think it'll pass next year? Maybe not. But I think eventually, right? I think it was, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but I think Churchill said something to the effect of Americans always make the right decision after trying out every wrong decision first.
Yeah.
So
Welcome to
um,
this
I,
country. Yeah,
I
exactly.
do have hope in the long term, even if I am pretty pessimistic about what's going to happen this year. I do. Um, that's not to say we shouldn't be concerned. That's not to say that we shouldn't be vigilant about the erosion of democratic norms. But do I think we should give up and say, we're cooked? I don't think so. I think I think it's worth fighting for. I think our country's worth fighting for.
I completely agree with, especially with that last. Like, I think that the nihilistic apathetic kind of approach is kind of lazy, honestly. And
Yeah.
I am often frustrated, especially because so many people on the left feel that way, And I get it. Of course, I get it. Like,
Mhm.
emotionally, it's exhausting. I feel like I've developed gray hair specifically because of this podcast, and I'd probably have more if I didn't, have the podcast. It's terrible, but, like, this country is so close to being good. Like, we have so much good stuff going. It's just operating on the worst possible way.
Mhm.
And there's really, I guess it could go down still, but we have a lot more upward mobility than downward mobility, I think, given where we are on the outcome spectrum, probably. That being said, yeah, I mean, I do think things have changed forever in some ways. I think, we've seen this week, Carney and these guys saying the end of, American dominance is over, that we've lost the second Cold War to China. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I do think the idea that the U.S. will have the soft power it's had over the last 20 years, I think that has probably changed in the short run, at least. Maybe the mid-run too, because I don't think we're an apology tour away from going back to normal. And that's what it's always been before, Obama comes in, oh, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? People go, oh, okay, we love you. And then same with even Biden, And I think this is different. I think the way we're going after our allies is different. I think they're going to realize that they can diversify their needs via China more than they want to. And I think when the U.S. loses its moral arguments that it rightfully has had for a long time, maybe not flawlessly, obviously, but like more so than Russia and or China, I think, it gets trickier, like people will just follow the money, I think, to some extent. And right now, the ease of doing business is getting a lot more leveled than it really ever really has any business being, right? I think it should be the easiest partner in the world for Europe, and I can't believe that isn't definitely true still. And same with Canada, right? So yeah, and then to that point, my honorable mention, I'm curious what you think, because I'm guarantee you have an opinion on it, is I don't think I get at probably the most common question I get submitted in is blank gonna be World War III? Is this World War III? Was Gaza World War III? Iran, the strikes on the nuclear plants, is this World War III? Is Venezuela World War III? Is all this stuff gonna... Greenland, I actually think Greenland, out of all of them, if they actually invaded Greenland, maybe that actually could be World War III. But like, almost always I go, no, come on, stop. You know what I mean? Like, that's always my answer. So to that vein, I think that China will not invade Taiwan. Definitely this year. I don't even think they're going to do it next year. I think, however, there will be more drills around Taiwan, more drills around Japan. I think this will freak people out. I think Trump will give a vague answer that doesn't guarantee Taiwanese safety. That will freak people out, and rightfully so. And this is going to be a talking point this year. But do I actually think China will invade Taiwan in 2026? No. And I really don't think they will in 2027. I know that's the year in their calendar that they wanted to get ready for it. I do think if they did, I wonder what justification the U.S. could have to stop it, since that they literally did it to Venezuela. But I don't know. People lie. People have short-term memories. I don't think that will happen. I'm really curious what you think about that, but that would be my honorable mention.
Just focus on China. Yeah, I don't think they're going to invade this year or next year. I think they're going to try eventually, because basically their entire reason for existence says that they have to eventually.
Oh, they want to.
Yeah.
Really badly. Yeah.
They really, really, really want to. But in terms of World War III, it never is World War III until it is, right? So
Yep.
I think if there's any single event that happens, I think it's always the safe bet to say no, it's not going to be World War III. I think 99.9% of the time you're going to be right. But, it only takes once, right? It only takes one mistake, one misstep. And, I think the problem is, even though I think World War III is incredibly unlikely, the risk of it is so high that it's still worth worrying about, because...
No, I don't think it's stupid questions. When I get them in, I don't laugh. Like, no, of course. Like, I get where it comes from.
Yeah, maybe there's a 1% chance or a 0.5% chance of World War III happening in the next few years, okay? But 0.5% chance of getting nuked and dying in a fiery, Armageddon, that's still scary, right?
Yeah, and we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that often de-escalates things from getting is the teams, right? You need teams for it to be a world war. And that's why I've said on the show before, like, if the U.S. invaded Greenland, that's actually something, because there's a clear team break, right? That would be the U.S. v. Europe. And that on its own maybe qualifies for a World War III. Just that alone, you know what I mean?
Right.
And God forbid any other country got involved. And I think if you actually had like NATO sans the US versus the current NATO, people would pick sides,
Yeah.
and that would be something. Now, as we've seen, it seems like cooler heads have prevailed, thank God. But like, yeah, it would be interesting with Taiwan because that would be that would have all the fixings for like a World War III, but you would have to see Russia get involved, or you'd have to see more than one, because that's what makes it World War and not just one war, right? It has to have the coalitions.
Right.
And yeah, it's weird just the way alliances. And all right, last thing before we go, just a funny little thought. I was talking about this. This is not not related, but I want to ask people this question. If the US was Europe, right, and say we weren't one country and it was just every state was its own country, right? And say like Texas is a country, Mexico, Texas is a country, like New Mexico is a country, all these countries, right? And say Trump was the president of the country of Texas. I know this is like fairy tale, but just a thing. Do you think he would have, at this point, tried to have invaded other states?
I mean, that's a great question. I think it depends on like what proportion of the US military is actually in Texas and like the relative strength of the
Yeah,
militaries
like,
of the different strengths. I think he certainly would be aggressive, and I think he would probably pick on some of the weaker neighbors, like let's say Louisiana or New Mexico, and
yeah.
maybe kind of chip in at their sovereignty and, maybe make a few incursions here or there, or kind of bully some trade deals that are in his favor. Um, I don't think, for all Trump's faults, I don't think he's usually the type to go in guns blazing and, just, start a shooting war at the drop of the hat. I think he's more of a kind of mafia boss, threaten, use, economic sanctions, and then maybe try to use some subterfuge here and there. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm tempted to say yes. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, depending on all the stuff you were talking about, but like, this is obviously so hypothetical, but like, yeah, if like Texas, you'd imagine has a good military presence for a state and stuff like that. And like, I definitely think he would be like dictator of Texas by now. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it'd be like a unilateral, like that, I think would be true. And just the thing that makes me think it isn't even all the rhetoric. It isn't even all the whatnot, like all the different stuff and all the withering of like all that matters. And of course it does. What really made me like really change to like, oh, this guy has it in him. You know what I mean? From just mafia boss, tough guy to like true maniac is with Venezuela, they didn't even hide that they just did it for the oil.
Mhm.
There was no, like, they would, some of the, like, the senators, like Lindsey Graham, stuff like that, would try to be like, oh, yeah, Maduro's a bad dude. But really, they didn't care. He briefed the oil execs beforehand,
Yeah.
After they said, are you doing it for the people? And go, no, we're doing it for the oil. Like, they didn't pretend. And basically every single kind of colonial power tried to pretend. The British Empire, we'll build schools, we're going to build roads, and we'll take their spices. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but there was always this like pseudo humanitarian front that had some real legitimacy to it, at least partially. You know what I mean? And you could always argue that side. And while it is true that you could argue it in the case of Maduro, they're not. They're not, What did
Yeah.
they do? We're going to invest. The oil companies are going to invest. We're going to bring the panel. They're meeting with executives. They're not even pretending. And
Yeah.
I just think like we don't see that.
Yeah.
Like that isn't something, even Putin pretended, these are Russian nationals in Ukraine. like that's usually the statesman lie, and they didn't bring that to the table. And I just feel like that comfort, and you saw it with Greenland too in the weeks prior to the conference, like what gives them the right? They landed a boat there. Come on, like yeah, that's literally how all these countries got formed. But like you know what I mean? Like we don't see that kind of talk from politicians. Period. Other
Yeah.
than the truly maniac ones like Napoleon,
Yeah. And
and
you know why though? Because he thought he could get away with it. And
exactly.
that I think is the bottom line, right? I think with Trump, if he could push a button and become dictator without any consequences, absolutely he would do it, right?
No doubt about it.
If he could invade other countries and take all their possessions and take over other countries without any negative repercussions, yeah, he would. Okay. But I think, it's all about what he thinks he can get away with. And that is the number one reason to vote because, people talk about, Trump eroding democratic norms, and that's true. But the inconvenient truth is that Trump was elected in a fair election twice by the people. Okay. And if he wasn't elected fairly, if the people didn't vote for him and they didn't support him, he wouldn't have been able to do it. So I think, he's going to do whatever he can get away with. And ultimately, if you don't want that to happen, the only way you can stop it is to vote. That's it.
100%. And just because it's a historic Republican district doesn't necessarily mean they all have to vote Republican again. They are humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, I know. I'm with you. And he will push it.
Yep.
He will go Napoleon.
Yeah, he'll go as far as we let him.
Yeah, I think that's the learn. And I think that's the ultimate storyline of this year is, will we let him? Will this country, this is the shot, right? And it's now or never. And if they don't do it now, there's a real chance it's never. It's maybe small, but it's enough that it's worth freaking out about.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so it's an interesting year ahead and one that will definitely be, I was talking to Rick about this. Are we not alive in the worst time? My God, COVID into this, Jesus Christ. The last 10 years have been brutal.
Yeah.
Trump into COVID into Trump again.
The hits keep coming.
Jesus Christ. Talk about a word other than the Civil War. Anyway, all right. Well, Dan, it's been an absolute treat talking to you about this. Thank you so much. This has been a blast.
My pleasure.
See you, man.
See ya.
And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening. And also, good job making it to the end. Happy to have you here. Welcome to the outro of the show. If you liked it, please give it a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts or wherever you're listening now. Especially Apple Podcasts would be a big help. If on YouTube, subscribe, all that stuff. Please comment, like I said at the top of the show. Would love to hear what you think, not only about Jesse and I's list, but what are your lists? What are your top 10? I'm really curious. Do you think we missed anything? You think we nailed it? I'm sure you're very happy with my list, but no, I am curious. And we'll be back on Sunday. Quick turnaround to talk about this news, this Davos. I always want to say Davos. Thank you, Boston accent. Davos. And all the drama that follows. But, yep. Until then, take it easy. You know I love ya. Bye.